good morning and welcome to Rising. We are already having so much fun here. Lindsey got caught in the rain. You had a harrowing journey.
Is DC usually this rainy?
No, it's not particularly rainy.
I'm not a huge fan of this torrential downpour.
Yeah,
Since April, I've been coming back and forth, and I feel like it's rained probably like half of the time.
There was a lot of rain this summer, yeah.
Yeah, I'm over it.
Well,
skip to winter. I'm a December baby.
No, I don't like the cold.
Oh,
but,
come on, just come on.
Well, I'm in a good mood anyway because I'm feeling better, and I'm excited to get to today's show.
Yep.
Fascinating topics, including something very near and dear to my heart.
I know. When you combine these two topics, I knew you were going to go off. So, Robby, what's on your radar?
All right. Here we go. Google admitted earlier this week that its COVID-era censorship policies were enacted at the explicit behest of the Biden administration. Well. And the company now says it will allow any content creator that was silenced for this reason to return to YouTube, which is a massive win for free speech, as well as an acknowledgement that those of us who objected to the government bullying the tech companies were right all along. This new policy was announced in response to an inquiry by House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, who asked Google for information about moderation decisions the company made during the Biden years. In response, Alphabet, the parent company of Google, said in a statement that, quote, senior Biden administration officials, including White House officials, conducted repeated and sustained outreach to Alphabet and pressed the company regarding certain user-generated content related to the COVID-19 pandemic that did not violate its policies. While the company continued to develop and enforce its policies independently, Biden administration officials continued to press the company to remove non-violative user-generated content, end quote. Alphabet's statement goes on to accuse the Biden administration of creating a, quote, political atmosphere that sought to influence the actions of platforms based on their concerns regarding misinformation. Alphabet also notes that it has already revised its election integrity policies, which had also led to the removal of content from YouTube. With this similar admission about the harms caused by the COVID policy, YouTube is now welcoming all creators terminated under the policies back to the platform. Come on in, the water's fine. Now, lest you think that means a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists, that's who's coming back, right? That's anybody who got kicked off. Well, consider this. Now, longtime viewers probably remember, but this channel, what you're watching right now, The Hill, was previously suspended for a week for allegedly breaking a rule that YouTube now admits was wrong. What am I talking about? Well, in March 2022, we were informed that we had violated an election integrity policy by posting allegedly false information about the 2020 election because we'd played video footage on the show, this show, of Trump saying that the election was stolen. We didn't say the election was stolen. We didn't endorse that view. We just reported the fact that Trump had said it. Think how crazy that is. Under YouTube's previous policy, they couldn't distinguish, or were unwilling to distinguish, between Trump saying something and a news channel reporting that he had said something. Here was me and my co-hosts at the time, Ryan Grimm and Kim Iverson, talking about what had happened to us after we served our 1-week stint in timeout.
So last week, if you haven't read Robby's piece or my piece, we committed 2 crimes. One crime was posting video.
I think it was 3 crimes.
I only know of 2 crimes.
I think it was 3 because it was last year.
Oh, there was a crime a year ago.
Right.
Yeah, and then doing it again this year.
They posted a Trump video.
And contrary to what our audience might have expected, it was not Kim's fault.
Yeah, believe it or not, I wasn't actually even involved
in the offending segment.
the video that ended up finally being like the nail in the coffin. It was you two. I leave you two alone for a minute.
It was Emily Jashinsky.
Man, what a blast from the past. Some fun times with those folks. Now, more than 3 years later, I actually don't blame YouTube as much for this kind of thing, even though it was wrong and crazy, because we now know that this platform, as well as Twitter X, Facebook, all the rest, faced relentless pressure to censor speech that dissented from the perspective of the Biden administration. We didn't know it then, particularly on the subject of COVID and the 2020 election. It was censorship. It was jawboning, the term we use to describe government figures trying to push companies to take some action. And it was wrong. Now, of course, many in the mainstream media are suddenly very, very worried about jawboning. They are extremely concerned about what the Trump administration is doing in terms of pressuring private media companies to do exactly what the Biden administration did. Here was Jake Tapper, for instance, reacting to Jimmy Kimmel getting temporarily taken off the air.
All right, Jimmy Kimmel, he's a friend of both of ours.
Yeah.
You know him, I know him. We know he's a good person. Obviously, this news is very exciting. But what was your original take on how this all went down starting last week?
I mean, I thought it was pretty much the most direct infringement by the government on free speech that I've seen in my lifetime.
Now, to be clear, I do agree that jawboning is a bad problem. I've been saying it for years. I do think the FCC should have just totally stayed out of the Kimmel issue. But let's not pretend this is the first time that this has ever happened. Thanks to pressure from the federal government when it was run by Democrats, social media giants engaged in vast censorship of you and of me. The shoe's on the other foot now, and that is wrong. But maybe more mainstream liberals should have taken notice when it was happening to us. I love the little stroll down memory lane. You can see that our set was completely different. Everything was totally different.
But it looks like a fun show with 3 people.
We had a lot of fun. So that was not usually the setup. Kim would do it remotely from California where she lived. But for that week, she was in town to visit. And actually, she
A special week where you
she
got deleted
planned
from
to
air.
come for the week. And then, like, she was, ready to board the flight or something. And they were like, we're actually going to be off for the next week. She was like, well, never mind. I'll come the week after.
Oh, my gosh. Okay,
fun times.
that's pretty crazy. Intensely on the flight or going to the flight. So I will say, I'm not even going to lie. Like, I was reading your radar earlier, and I'm like, you know what? You're right, right? This is
crazy.
It is. For you guys to get cut off air for a soundbite is not right. I do believe that social media is the wild, wild west. We understand that the FCC and its rules apply directly to broadcast channels in a different way than YouTube is monitored, or even cable or other ways that people get news. So I just think it's important to understand what's allowed, and what's not allowed according to these rules. Like perjury in court, we should always say that that's wrong and that's against the law, right? There's certain things that are not freedom of speech that are written down, but I think we have to follow it to the textbooks, and you can't be a hypocrite on either side. I call for the same thing from Republicans, to not have been campaigning against cancel culture and then do this the same way Democrats in the weeds. I didn't know it went as far as to take the hill off the air. That's extreme.
It's
But I
crazy.
do think,
again, the difference
but
between the speaker and the platform
so I would
is
just
what's
say,
not
but
being
the only reason
recognized.
why I have a little bit of hesitancy, and I don't want to say caveat for what I think is right, but when you talk about COVID, we were in a pandemic of, once in a lifetime, where people were so jarred by information and so overwhelmed that it could lead to mass panic, which is also really problematic for leadership in any country. And so when people are spreading misinformation, and mind you, the CDC got it wrong. We agree on that plenty of times. But when people are just spreading any information, there was a little bit of a need to know, who is just taking something they read in a blog and who is actually telling you facts. And some people consume social media in a way that if somebody looks like they're an authority figure, then they're automatically right. And that just could be putting up a podcast set in your house. And people just take it as law. And then with the election, we saw that it actually caused, that sentiment caused people to revolt and try to, go into our Capitol and storm it.
To that,
so I just think that we have to be mindful of things that might directly incite mass chaos.
But I don't think, I think the attempts to suppress those sentiments can actually make them be held more powerfully and strongly by people, because you actually can't stop them from hearing about it. I mean, this was with the Hunter Biden New York Post story, right? It got taken off social media at the encouragement of law enforcement because they said this is a false story, don't listen to it. So they could suppress that story, but they couldn't suppress all the stories about this story being suppressed. So you call more attention to it. I think that's a lesson to Trump, honestly, as he goes forward with some of this Kimmel stuff and some of the, attacking New York Times, attacking the Wall Street Journal over the Epstein birthday card.
Right.
More people have heard about it because now you hear about the lawsuit. You can try to suppress the thing, but you actually call more attention to it. And that's why I think some of these efforts were
And I think
misguided.
when you back up and look at what Trump's doing and things that you named, also who's in position at certain companies, like his former ambassador now at CBS, or all his friends running most social media companies, Elon Musk, people that are cozy up to him, Mark Zuckerberg. These are all people that have sit next to him and okay, I'm going to say whatever you want now because I'm your friend. This causes, to me, an eyebrow raise, and everyone should be raising their eyebrows, because it's not just free and uncensored. If Elon Musk is programming Grok to say things that lean conservative.
Well, yeah, he owns Grok, so he can do that.
Right, but
That's different than, I don't want him having to program Grok because he thinks whoever the the legislators or the FCC or the president is going to break up the company or regulate the company because Grok is not programmed to the president's specifications. That's the harm.
I think we're going to talk about this a lot more with all the censorship coming from your party or your friends.
Not my party.
Your friends.
My friends, kind of, maybe. Republicans, next up, have condemned another alleged act of political violence. What we know about yesterday's shooting at an ICE facility in Dallas. We'll be right back. DHS and members of the Trump administration are speaking out after what they say is another act of political violence yesterday. This time, an attack on an ICE detention facility in Dallas. Here's what we know so far. A gunman opened fire on the immigration field office from a nearby roof early yesterday morning, killing one of the detainees and critically wounding two others. According to DHS, all three were in a van outside the facility at the time. Law enforcement has identified the suspected shooter as 29-year-old Joshua John. They say he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Now, while the exact motive of the shooter isn't exactly clear, FBI Director Kash Patel posted this image to X, writing in part, "While the investigation is ongoing, an initial review of the evidence shows an ideological motive behind this attack. One of the unspent shell casings recovered was engraved with the phrase anti-ICE."
The Trump administration was quick to jump on the apparent anti-ICE messaging. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem took to X, writing, quote, "For months, we've been warning politicians and the media to tone down their rhetoric about ICE law enforcement before someone was killed. These horrendous killings must serve as a wake-up call to the far left that their rhetoric about ICE has consequences. Comparing ICE day in and day out to the Nazi Gestapo, the secret police, and slave patrols has consequences." And Trump himself pointing the blame squarely at Democrats, writing on Truth Social in part, "This violence is the result of the radical left Democrats constantly demonizing law enforcement, calling for ICE to be demolished, and comparing ICE officers to Nazis. ICE officers and other brave members of law enforcement are under grave threat. We've already declared Antifa a terrorist organization, and I'll be signing an executive order this week to dismantle these domestic terrorism networks. I'm calling on all Democrats to stop this rhetoric against ICE and America's law enforcement right now." Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance had this message to Democrats during a speech in North Carolina yesterday.
"When Democratic politicians incur doxing, when they encourage us to unmask ICE enforcement officers, what do you think is going to happen? When the mayor of Los Angeles encourages violent protesters to get in the face of our law enforcement, what do you think is going to happen? If you want to stop political violence, stop attacking our law enforcement as the Gestapo. If you want to stop political violence, stop telling your supporters that everybody who disagrees with you is a Nazi. If you want to stop political violence, look in the mirror."
In response, Democrats have largely condemned the violence, but former Congressman turned podcaster Joe Walsh addressed Vance's comments specifically, writing on his Substack, quote, "Political violence against anyone is wrong. But yes, there's a but. What ICE is doing right now in America is also wrong, and it's un-American. You have no right to silence me and others merely for accurately labeling what ICE is doing as authoritarian, thuggish, fascist, and un-American. Yes, there have been a number of threats and acts of violence against ICE. They are reprehensible, but to accuse us and our words of leading to the violence and threats, well, you know the rest."
So a couple important clarifications here. So this was a shooter shooting into a van blindly, and the person, and actually what I've read subsequently is that, so correct me if I'm wrong, I think two people have been killed, and I think we said one, but I think it's two. They were detainees. They were not law enforcement agents. It was people who'd been detained by ICE, so he didn't even shoot. Now, he was shooting blindly, so maybe he was trying to kill the law enforcement agents, has the anti-ICE message on the bullet. I was bamboozled yesterday on social media by the number of high-profile left accounts I said saying, well, we don't really know why he did it. Could be anything. Could be right-wing. It says anti-ICE on the bullet. Like, what kookery is this?
You know what? I'll start with this.
Would they tell you why they're doing it?
They don't have all the information. And first of all, so what if this is somebody trying to incite, a war between two parties? What if this is so we don't have all the information. And it's also, I think just like in the instance of Charlie Kirk being assassinated, there is a rush to score political points between not even between both parties, on the Republican side of the aisle. And to me, that's a
He
disgusting
told his
thing
trans
to do
lover that
when-
he shot Charlie Kirk because Charlie Kirk
day
was
one,
too hateful.
before we
this
had
is not a mystery.
No, before we had any information, the day of the shooting, the
Well, yeah,
moment
then we
after the
should
shooting,
not
there was
say anything.
immediate rush to left-wing rhetoric. And when you see J.D. Vance and the president go on Truth Social and point to left-wing violence constantly, to me, you're not taking the moment to just condemn a murderer and also try to unite the country. This is in 2-week span. This is the negative. We heard Trump say, I hate my opponents at a funeral memorial service. It's just kind of disgusting language when we just know people were getting killed. I don't think that the two thoughts can't be true at once. People do condemn violence and should at the highest level of especially Congress and government, but also just regular people who vote on the left. But then at the same time, they could also say, I think that ICE agents should be unmasked. It's not American to have people walking around in masks, throwing people in vehicles, and people don't understand who's arresting them. It's the same thing
I'm
as
not a fan of
knocking
masks.
down the door. Right. It's the same thing as knocking down the door and going in someone's house at 3 a.m. Yes, you don't want them to have an inkling that you're coming, but at the same time, you're going to cause them to react.
But
we talk about that. So masking up somebody and them trying to
that's-
arrest you immediately and throwing you in a vehicle is going to alarm anyone.
That's fine. I don't agree with doing that, and I don't agree with a lot of ISIS policies. But for years, I've been told that right-wing rhetoric correlates with right-wing violence, and now we are seeing, maybe it's not statistical, maybe it's incidental, maybe this will be the end of it, but now we've seen a series of left-wing motivated, plausibly left-wing motivated, violent attacks, and so the right is saying, well, you're the ones who said it's caused by rhetoric, so we are telling you tone down your rhetoric.
But
Is that not fair?
But after the lawmakers in Minnesota were killed, we weren't talking about the fact that Trump is the reason why it happened when he calls Democrats fascists as well. That's not at least what was coming out of my mouth. And so I think when you want to be responsible, especially as a leader, you shouldn't try to figure out who caused somebody to be a criminal, who caused somebody to be a murderer. I think that that is not a direct correlation, even though in the whole
I'm
argument
accustomed
from
to every time someone who's kind of right-wing, maybe plausibly, or just hateful, does something evil, that it's Tucker Carlson's fault, it's Fox News's fault, it's Trump's fault, it's the fault of Joe Rogan. It's the fault of conservative rhetoric. That's been
and
the
on both
narrative
sides, there
for
should
years.
be a conversation about
And
trying to
that's
find out
stupid.
why the killer killed, right?
Yeah.
Because if you say something that doesn't, and it can't be the same party arguing that President Trump didn't directly incite a riot on January 6th, being the same people that are saying, oh, your words incited a killing. That's like contradictory. It's just like, stick to what you're doing. If the whole playbook for Republicans is to mirror everything they hated about Democrats doing, that's a failed playbook, and it's going to come back and bite everybody, because when Democrats get back in office, they'll do the same thing. So why is that something that you're going to perpetuate if you hated it so much, from cancel culture to what's happening right now? It's kind of ridiculous. Like, we're like arguing the opposite side just because it benefits our parties. And when you think about this conversation, like, let's just stop overreaching government. Let's stop doing things that don't make sense. Let's take the masks off of agents. Let's put body cameras on. Let's just protect America. Let's bring transparency.
I don't think
forward.
anyone's against body camera. We're all for body cameras. Body cameras can be used to acquit. It's a pro-law enforcement move, if anything, because when they get falsely accused of having done something wrong, they can protect themselves. Or if they commit some abuse, then yes, that should be. Nobody's arguing against it. The body cameras that I can hear of.
Well, there was plenty of arguments coming from the right about body cameras when they first were proposed, but now it's the mask argument. It's
Yeah.
the same thing. Why do we want people hiding? Like, just, you can do your job.
Well, it's so they're not, doxxed or their families or harassed. They should be. I don't know about closing. They should be identified as law enforcement. That for sure. It should say. It should distinguish. ICE, police. It should say what you are. I don't know if your face needs to necessarily
especially
be.
the face mask hating friend.
Well, I don't like face masks in general, but.
So did DOGE go too far, too fast with federal cuts? Well, the Trump administration is set to rehire more laid-off federal workers. We're going to talk about that right after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
The White House is rehiring hundreds of federal employees left jobless from DOGE cuts. It's too sad. I can't continue. According to documents obtained by the Associated Press, the General Services Administration is giving their employees let go during Musk's cost-cutting blitz until October 6th to accept or decline getting their jobs back.
The GSA constructs, manages, and preserves government buildings. They were among the first targeted by Musk and DOGE. Thousands of employees either resigned, accepted early retirement, or were just pushed out of the agency. This is just more proof of a fast-paced federal cuts that went too far, too quick. Over 201,000 federal employees have left government positions since the start of Trump's second term, and several of those employees from the IRS, Labor Department, and National Park Service have already been reinstated. Yeah, it's you know what's just to cry about? Let me rub your shoulder, because you should be crying about what a disastrous job Elon Musk did. I really want to cry with you. This is a disaster, poor management, handling of these government employees. I talked to a government employee that voted for President Trump, who was crying like you because he didn't understand why he lost his job. He said he got nothing but rave reviews, knocking it out of the park every time, and voted for Trump, not Elon Musk, and was confused about why Elon Musk was making his decision about his job in the first place. So yes, give those tears back to the people who deserve to stop crying, because now they can get paid again. Because this was a disaster. The deficit went up because of the big, beautiful bill. DOGE is basically irrelevant at this point. And that's why you go through the proper channels to get real laws passed, and don't try to put some fake institution in like DOGE to just cut everything dramatically and then go back and realize, oh my gosh, people are dying around the world because of aid. We talked about that yesterday. Oh my gosh, federal employees need to come back because we need buildings to be restored.
Someone
Bring
is
them
dying
back
somewhere.
So,
you, the taxpayers, have to pay.
I'm just
more
saying,
about
like,
it 'cause
here
of the
we go.
starving
There's a
children.
strategy that works. It's called making a plan. My parents told me that when I was younger. You don't just go, like we talked about yesterday, just pull the rug and say, oh, it's time to change the
We have
furniture.
to save our country. We don't
have to
time
make a plan.
and be careful, and we have to move fast and break things. We have to.
No.
We have to save our country from crippling generational debt that will be left for your children and mine, because our lawmakers move too slowly in reforming government and cutting entitlements and fixing our massive spending problem. The government employees are not the entire spending problem, but they're part of it. And Elon came in to save us from ourselves, and we were not worthy of it.
So tell me, whose fault is this then? Because now that President Trump's administration
stops
is
here. It's
bringing
the administration's
people,
fault.
okay, so this is another failure to bring, because DOGE said they cut.
I'm not unwilling to criticize the administration.
I just want to make sure that we're
really-
crystally clear, telling the audience this is a failure, that DOGE said it saved $206 billion.
I blame the radical left.
$1,279
Antifa.
per taxpayer. But this is a lie.
it's
They
not-
didn't. Everyone's coming back. It's whose fault?
It's Trump's fault.
Okay, so
the buck
that's
stops
what.
there.
Yeah, this is a disaster. I'm glad you could admit that.
It's a disaster.
And then not only are we bringing everybody back not everybody, bringing a lot of people back, we're also raising the deficit over the next few years because of the big, beautiful bill and doing tons of other things. And we can't even figure out if we're going to have an operating country in the next 5 days, because they won't get the spending bill situated. So really, across the board, 0 out of 10s across the board. I know it's usually 10 out of 10, but 0 out of 10 is on the economy and what we're doing here.
I'm going to set myself on fire. It's just bad. It goes to show how difficult it is to make any progress cutting the government, that even an administration that brings in someone as its senior advisor, financier, number 2 person, completely committed to the cause of bringing this all to a screeching halt, wasn't able to even made a dent for a few weeks, and now it's been undone. It's very, very, very
sad.
Very sad. And
So sad that Elon Musk doesn't want to get
therapy
back into
process.
politics, or he wants to run his own party.
Don't blame him.
Maybe. Up next, the Tylenol debate is taking over the White House and the minds of expecting mothers. More on that in My Lens next. Stick around.
Welcome back to Rising. Lindsey, what is in your lens today?
We are talking about this Tylenol story because I'm not over it. Becoming a parent is scary and it's exciting, but it shouldn't feel stressful because of powerful people telling you things that simply are not facts. This week, former President Barack Obama accused President Donald Trump of committing what he called, quote, violence against the truth. And honestly, that phrase stopped me in my tracks. Because when it comes to health, misinformation doesn't just confuse people, it causes chaos, undermines trust, and leaves parents paralyzed with fear. So here's what happened. Donald Trump recently told pregnant women not to take Tylenol, a medicine millions rely on, claiming it's linked to a, quote, very increased risk of autism.
Don't take Tylenol. Don't take it. If you just can't, it's fight like hell not to take it.
And then he doubled down, urging women to, quote, tough it out through pain or fever instead of taking the medication. Now, if you've ever been pregnant like I have, or love someone who is, you know those fevers and aches are not small things. And the idea that women should just tough it out is not only dismissive, but it's dangerous. Obama swiftly responded from a stage in London at an event, calling out his successor, saying, quote, we have the spectacle of my successor in the Oval Office making broad claims around certain drugs and autism that have been continuously disproved. And he didn't stop there. Obama pointed out that spreading these claims doesn't just confuse the public, it actively hurts families, noting, quote, all of that is violence against the truth. And he's not alone. The World Health Organization yesterday jumped in, releasing a statement underscoring that there's no scientific consensus connecting Tylenol use to pregnancy and autism. They wrote, quote, extensive research, including large-scale studies over the past decade, has found no consistent association. And even Dr. Oz, yes, the former TV host who's now running the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services under Trump, contradicted the president. Speaking to TMZ, he was asked the question that so many mothers have.
Do I take the Tylenol to eliminate the fever, or do I risk the fever and therefore risk birth defects? What do you say to that?
Dr. Levin, well said. That's exactly the conundrum. Now, what do you do when you have a problem like that? You should call your doctor.
That's the point right there. Decisions about pregnancy, medicine, and autism don't belong at political rallies. They belong in doctors' offices guided by science, research, and compassion, not fear and ideology. So let's be clear. A fever can be dangerous in pregnancy. Tylenol, when used correctly, is still considered safe. And autism is not some political football to be tossed around for applause lines. Now, parents already carry enough anxiety. The last thing they need is fear planted from the highest office in the land. When the leaders spread half-baked science, it doesn't protect families, it puts them at risk. That's not leadership, that is recklessness. Or as Obama put it, that is, quote, violence against the truth. So I really didn't like this because I saw so many moms online that are like, wait, my doctor told me to take Tylenol. So imagine if you have anything in an instance that comes up and you decided to or not take Tylenol, and then you're beating yourself up for the rest of your life because of any incident that happens, when what is actually true is clear. So genetics are a huge risk factor for autism and that has been connected. That dot has been fully factually connected. Other risks include the age of the father, preterm birth, things like this. But he's trying to directly draw a line from one Harvard study, and the author of the Harvard study said, quote, the co-author said, I'm a little concerned about how this message is going to come because I think they may be jumping the gun. Her name is Ann Bauer. She said, I think those of us in the research community would like to see stronger evidence. She's the author of the study that President Trump is citing. So she even thinks it was one instance and a lot of studies that said otherwise, and she wants to see more research, and she thought he was jumping the gun by going public telling women on television, do not do this, try by any means. But mind you, a fever could cause birth defects as well by letting it just go.
I was looking at my phone because I was trying to pull this up. What am I to make of this tweet? We actually don't we actually don't recommend using any of our products while pregnant. Thank you for taking the time to voice your concerns today. That is a tweet from Tylenol, the company.
Well,
in 2017.
Okay.
So they don't even.
Yeah, you're not supposed to take a lot of medicine while you're pregnant. And since only one of us has been pregnant, Robby, let me tell you.
Well, that's what Trump said.
If I have a fever,
you have to take it because you have a fever.
He's like, fight like hell. That's what he said. That's what he said. Don't take it. Anything you can do. That's not true. If you have an extreme,
crazy.
Yes, it was. He was very passionate about it. Even on the TMZ interview, they were like, let's clarify because parents are confused. If your presidency and your leadership causes confusion, that is not a good thing. And so we have to be clear. When we see RFK in front of Congress and can't even explain himself and his choices, and he's arguing with Susan Monterez about what actually happened and whether we're going. No, I'm talking
about what he said on Tylenol. What he said was, don't try to avoid taking it, but if you have a fever, obviously,
he didn't say it that calm.
Take it.
He said, this is a quote, there's no downside in not taking it. There is a downside in not taking it. For example, if you have an untreated fever that could lead to birth defects, according to doctors and scientists around the country.
But he said take it for fever.
He did not. I'm quoting this man. He didn't say, he said, fight like hell. These are quotes. He had very aggressive language, and then RFK came behind him. No, I just, like, come on. If you hear your president screaming that, and this is what you see on the podium like a lunatic, then
the Tylenol company.
Your doctor tells you.
You should. They think you should not take it at all.
Leisurely for a little ache and pain. But if you have a fever or certain instances, your doctor's going to tell you, hey, the only thing you can take. It's not like other things like Advil are an option when you're pregnant. They have other significant reasons why you shouldn't take them, and you should talk to your doctor about that. But one of the only options to reduce fever would be, and as somebody who gets migraines often, Tylenol. And so I just think unless we're sure.
I was ill the last few days. I took tons of Tylenol. I took tons of ibuprofen. I take painkillers like candy. It's probably not good for me. And if somebody said to me, you should probably try to wean yourself off it a little bit or limit how much of this you're taking, I'd say, yeah, that's probably good advice.
So you don't mind that the president has jumped the gun according to the study's co-author? that she feels like he went a bit far for the amount of research that they have, and that's okay for your president to find something out. It's like if you read
I think the
something
link
may
between
be true,
Tylenol and autism is not
clear
at all totally
at all.
established. There is the research here is less shoddy than the research positing a link between the vaccines and autism. There is a study. It's not a complete study. It might be a correlation. Because the siblings didn't have it as well, there's some suspicion of it. Like you said, I think there are a number of genetic factors that might make you have a potential to be predisposed toward autism, and then there could be a bunch of different factors. For all we know, Tylenol is one of a tiny little thing that could nudge you within that possibility. Maybe vaccines are too. Maybe it's so small, and maybe it's not. We don't know for sure. It's probably so many factors. There's no one thing. And people like easy explanations. People like to say, oh, this is what caused it. When it's like, well, it's 8,000 other things plus genetic predisposition, and it's a complicated picture, and there's no easy answer to it. But just the general advice that
don't take Tylenol.
Don't take it.
That's what he
think
said.
Twice if you really need it.
That's what he said.
Is advice not just for pregnant people, but for everyone.
I'm quoting this man, and so I'm asking from the top level, you don't think that we should have definitive statements before we come out and release just random information to the public that hasn't been proven? You don't see any issue in that causing chaos among pregnant. Think about somebody pregnant right now.
It's consistent with what the Tylenol company itself says, so I don't know how.
No, it's not consistent with what doctors and researchers say, and that's the overall problem. I know you don't want to talk
The maker
about
of the drug.
I know you
said
don't
it.
want to talk about RFK and his disastrous leadership. You wanted to skip over that when I brought it up and tied Congress to this, even though it's directly
I'm not
correlated.
defending RFK here. I'm just saying Trump.
Yeah, he was at the press conference with him.
Yeah,
They thought this was like a profound moment.
Very
And to
upset
me-
in the back that it wasn't about vaccines. His hobby horse that he's been pushing. No, this is I don't know. This seemed within the bounds of reasonable.
You're not being reasonable to the people that are actually affected, Robby. I don't think that you're ever going to be pregnant, right? I'm pretty sure and confident about that.
Men cannot get pregnant, Lindsey.
So since you won't be,
I'm not a left-wing person.
Since you won't be,
Yeah.
then I'm just going to assume that you could understand and be empathetic to the plight and conundrum that women might be feeling right now, who hear their president on TV making something that sounds like a definitive
Lindsey,
statement, but then have doctors telling them otherwise.
Policy pronunciation is not changing any actual regulatory policy. Acetaminophen is going to remain available over the counter to anyone who wants it. So no one is telling anyone they can't. It's just a statement of opinion about under which circumstances you should or shouldn't. But they're not changing any aspect about how it is available. So I don't care. At the end of the day, it's like they're not changing or restricting it in any way.
You saying a statement of opinion? We're talking about facts and science.
If they said,
that is the biggest issue.
If they said now it's
exactly
going to be prescribed and you can't get it,
no, he's providing,
I would be very upset.
The
but they're
president's
not
providing
changing.
a statement of opinion based on unproven research. And that's what I'm saying. That's the biggest issue to me, is that a lot of what's coming out of RFK's mouth is a statement of opinion. Taking that exact word you said, that's the problem. We should not be mixing people's health with statements of opinion, because people have their livelihoods on the line. There's people who think, oh, I should be hesitant about vaccines, and then deciding to find a loophole to not vaccinate their kid because of things that RFK has alluded to. And so I think that's important to make sure leadership
We could go down the line of opinions on medical issues given by Biden and people during the COVID pandemic that were not exactly accurate, but I don't think we have the...
Fine, a national emergency is the same thing as Tylenol. Go ahead.
Vice President J.D. Vance, next up, is defending the Trump administration from accusations of censorship after Jimmy Kimmel's late night show was suspended. More on that after the break. Vice President J.D. Vance sat down for an interview with News Nation's Rashad Hudson on Wednesday.
Vance was asked what he thought about the ongoing situation between ABC and Jimmy Kimmel. The VP said he doesn't think Kimmel did enough to make amends in his return to late night TV, but let's take a look.
I watched it and look, in some ways it was kind of kind-hearted. On the other hand, he didn't actually say sorry to Charlie Kirk or his family. And the reason that so many people, including me, were so upset with what Jimmy Kimmel said is that he accused Charlie Kirk's murderer of being a MAGA or a right-wing American. It wasn't a joke. It was straight-up disinformation. And I really wish Jimmy Kimmel would apologize for it.
In his monologue on Tuesday, Kimmel appeared emotional when he talked about Charlie Kirk, saying it was, quote, never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. Kimmel also went after President Trump and the FCC, accusing them of censorship and pressuring ABC to take the show off the air.
After the monologue, Trump blasted both ABC and Kimmel in a post on Truth Social saying, quote, "I think we're going to test ABC out on this. Let's see how we do." Some viewed that as a threat against the broadcasting company, but Vance insisted that's not the case.
Kimmel was taken off the air because he had low ratings, because the late night talk show host model is not doing particularly well. And let's be honest, because he had become so politically unhinged that I think he wasn't particularly funny. Now, the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, put out a couple of tweets, but the government took no action. We did literally nothing to try to take Jimmy Kimmel off the air. We believe in free speech. We also believe in the right of a television station or a network to cancel somebody because of low ratings.
So there's two things. The first thing is, with recent actions taken by the Trump administration to silence voices that they dissent to, like the New York Times most recently, or what happened with Paramount suing them, or like he mentioned with ABC, he's like, I might sue you again on Truth Social, talking about for bringing Kimmel back. Those are government-related threats to organizations, and I feel
an
that
individual suing someone is not a government threat.
Well, he's the president, though. He's suing because he wants people to stop. He said they're not presenting him well, or that's not, well, what did he say? That they're negative press of him. And so that's one thing. And then Brendan Carr works directly with you and is saying these idle threats, and you run the FCC on podcasts. Well, people are going to connect the dots, Vance. So stop acting, you're a brilliant guy. Stop acting silly like you don't understand why people would say that. You can't fathom that. And then when Pam Bondi's on podcast saying something different than you are, there's a lot of conversations around kind of bringing in speech and controlling speech as a government, and government officials are the ones saying this out loud and getting criticized from his party. So his confusion is kind of just silly to me. He understands exactly what the issue is.
I appreciated a lot of what he said in that interview. It was a very solid interview. And I don't always agree with things that J.D. Vance says. He's particularly on social media more provocative in some cases than I would certainly like him to be. But here he said, his take was basically what Steve Krakauer's take was, who we spoke to yesterday, and my take, which is that, Jimmy Kimmel expressed some nice sentiments, but it could have gone a little bit farther in terms of actually apologizing for wrongfully associating the killer with the right, which is not correct. And then I'm glad that he said that, no, the government's not going to take any action. He didn't come out and criticize Brendan Carr, but he did downplay the significance of what he said. He's not going to criticize someone in the administration, so I wouldn't expect him to say, I disagree with what Brendan Carr said. But he made it sound as if he didn't want the government to take any action, and just beyond the words of what Brendan Carr said, and emphasize that it was a market decision, which I hope is the case, because I don't think the FCC should get involved, and Ted Cruz and Rand Paul don't think the government should get involved. So that was a statement of the principles I think are correct, and actually might go to show that under a future president, J.D. Vance, maybe this line would be blurred a little bit less, because you'd have a president who committed to free speech. Donald Trump is still...
He committed to free speech. He said he's going to sign an executive order on it, President Trump. And then here you are saying, no, I want to silence speech. So I don't care what J.D. Vance said in an interview versus what he might do.
Donald Trump is a little bit more ideologically consistent in his thinking than Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not an ideologically consistent person. That's not even I don't mean that in an insulting way. He just isn't. He does things that he thinks are right. He retaliates against people he thinks are in the wrong. He does not think in terms of ideology first, which has freed him to be more of he is not bound to follow the prescripts of one ideology or the other. So he has moderated the Republican Party on the issues of entitlements, for instance. He has done less than Mitt Romney would have done, or probably even John McCain, in terms of changing Social Security and Medicare, or Paul Ryan wanted to privatize some of those programs. Trump is not ideological, so he's like, well, that's not popular, we don't want to do that. And then he's moved the party further to the right on immigration. He's moved the party in a completely different direction on tariffs. His foreign policy, which I actually like, is inconsistent with the Republican foreign policy of the aughts. He does what he thinks makes sense. And again, you've criticized this, but he's changed his tactics with Russia, Ukraine several different times, resulting from changing circumstances and how he feels about the various parties. It's not ideological, it's personality driven. That's allowed him to be the most successful political leader in terms of building a coalition and remaining in charge of his coalition, the most successful political actor in American politics conceivably ever.
And
so
that's like a domino effect of
amazing.
like when Trump says something that makes absolutely no sense, everyone just repeats it, and that's from changing policy, but it also goes down. Wait, let me finish. There's a small level to it, like, hey guys, look at the cue card. We're gonna say low-rated Jimmy Kimmel format's dying. And now J.D. Vance is repeating that
right
word for
about
word.
that.
Wait, and then
I've said that.
I know, that's what I'm getting to. And then you repeated that line by line like Trump's holding up a cue card. But here's the deal. The answer to most questions is money. Almost 4 billion people, almost $4 billion was lost by ABC from turning that show off because people canceled their subscriptions and because of their stock prices. Almost 6 million people.
Their subscriptions because they haven't made a good Star Wars in 5 years.
Almost 6 million people tuned into his show when he came back. So these are numbers that are breaking records for late night TV, even though it's a format that's dying and nobody cares about Jimmy Kimmel and he's not funny.
No,
it just happened.
Totally
so
right
the answer to your question is money, and so he is generating money. And once again, and actually, Vance and Trump probably did him a favor by piquing the interest of people who thought he was being canceled by the government that are now tuning in to see how he's going to operate next and for the next few months.
I warned you
so he
about
should say
the
thank
Streisand effect, that trying to censor or making it seem like you're censoring someone can draw more attention to them. I said that earlier, so it would not surprise me if this has gotten him a
large
boost.
6 million is a large number, yes?
A boost, a fleeting and temporary
6 million is a large number.
It's not going to translate. It's not.
If you allow fleeting for DOGE, like they come in and do a policy, it's fleeting, now everyone's back. You should allow fleeting for entertainment television. I don't think it's going to be fleeting, but allow the room to see what happens
This is not reversing
next.
the long-term trajectory of the decline of late night into utter irrelevancy because young people
reading the cue cards again.
Information. I'm not reading that. This is
a cue card. I think President Trump is standing over here.
Then they're
Robby's
reading my cue cards. This is from the Robby's mind. This is maybe they're watching Rising. Maybe J.D. Vance watched Rising and said, "Oh, Robby's got a point about this. Young people don't watch late night. We can't even get them off their."
Robby, just because, let me say, because you always have this rampage about boomers. There are still older people in our society that watch a lot of TV, that spend a lot of money. No, it's just, your whole sentiment on boomers is ridiculous. They still generate a lot of income. They're still working. There's a lot of people still, yes.
It's our time now.
No, you can't just say, oh, young people aren't voting, so the election. Most people who vote are older. The younger generation is just starting to get on board.
That's why they have a stranglehold on our policies, and our policies exhaustively benefit older Americans, a transfer of wealth from relatively poor younger Americans to relatively wealthier older Americans that I am.
Everything's not a boomer's fault, though. That's what I'm saying.
Rise up, children.
No.
We must take back our country.
Blames everything.
From the hippies
oh, they're getting older.
who have taken it over. Rise up. All right. Have you seen this new addition to the White House? Oh, I did see this. President Trump honoring former presidents, most former presidents, but not one in particular. We'll be right back to look at that after this. President Trump is unveiling a new addition to the White House while trolling former President Biden in the process. The White House showing off their new Walk of Fame located right outside the White House. It shows the faces of former presidents, except for one of them. For former President Biden's portrait, it's a picture of an AUTOPEN. There it is.
President Trump recently said he would use an AUTOPEN picture to replace Biden's portrait. The Trump administration has been keen on proving that Biden's use of AUTOPEN shows mental decline during the end of his time as president. AUTOPENs have been used by both parties in the past. President Biden and his team have not commented on this new portrait, and why would they? Because who has time? Because Trump's obsession with President Biden is getting kind of weird at this point. He needs to just stop. This man is ailing and has cancer. You know, maybe the pile-on is done. You know, everybody else is jumping on.
No.
Like, have some empathy and be an adult. An AUTOPEN picture is like, you know, if I could do something to get somebody back in third grade, that's what I would think of. Put a picture of you that's not actually you.
It was a little.
Like, it just shows a low emotional intelligence. Yeah, it's not.
It was a little undignified. I didn't love it, to be honest. It seemed.
It's our president of our country. Like, imagine watching the news and the BBC in the UK and like, that's what they're doing over there. When people
also a little like erasing the, that it's a Soviet thing where you scrub out Comrade Brezhnev after he's had a falling out with the party. I didn't care for it. I want to continue to exhaustively litigate Biden's term.
I don't.
I am not at all.
You got to move on, and the current president is the president.
No, sirree, no, sir. We are not moving on, but we don't need to do cheap shots like that. That was a little.
Because why?
Silly.
Because also Obama was just talking about you yesterday, but you have no smoke for Obama. He left his picture up there, cheesing, looking handsome, and then here goes.
I just like.
He put himself twice, obviously. It's like
tax me to death, tax me to death, war criminal, tax me to
AUTOPEN,
death, war criminal, tax
flip-flopper,
Patriot,
and flip-flopper again. Yeah, I just think this is not good. And look at that portrait of President Trump, the most recent one. Like, why? Why can't you smile? You see how Obama was looking?
Picture.
Why does he want to be intimidating? And to whom? He's not intimidating Russia at this point. Who's he intimidating?
His enemies.
Yeah, he's only trying to
They
intimidate
shall fear
Democrats.
him.
No, that's ridiculous.
Well,
we are a
they're
country that works
cowering.
together. No, people, not Newsom. Newsom is not cowering. I'm watching people actually stand up.
Yeah.
Jasmine Crockett
it's
is
just
not
like Newsom's
cowering.
gonna come in then, and he's gonna replace the AI, the Trump photograph with like an AI photo of Trump that's like embarrassing.
I wouldn't like that either, but I would laugh.
I don't want to, like, every time a new administration comes in, they're going to change all the portraits to be insulting to the other side. This seems a little bit juvenile.
Childish, petty.
Yes.
Small,
I agree.
especially when people
Although there's that stupid statue of
No, it got
Trump
taken
and
down.
Epstein as
It got
friends that
taken
you
down.
thought was
It was supposed to-
hilarious,
it was supposed to last
Is that
until-
juvenile?
That wasn't by a government official. It was
when
by
they
a
do it, it's
secret
okay.
organization.
So when they do it, it's okay.
A private individual has freedom of speech. They decided to put the statue up.
You also
The
thought it was
president
amazing.
of our country, it's hilarious. Robby, if you decide to go
Why
put up a
isn't this
statue of
hilarious?
me,
Well, then
because this is the
Republicans are
president
gonna
of our
think-
country.
Republicans think this is hilarious. So what's the...
Okay, so some random pedestrian should put up photos in their house of all the presidents and put an AUTOPEN for Biden. That would be hilarious. The president of our country spending his time and money, because somebody had to go print that out of the taxpayers, probably, to hang up a picture of AUTOPEN of Biden is childish and also a waste of time and money when there's so many pressing issues that a president of a nation should be handling. Starting with the economy that you promised that you would make more pleasant for the average American that is not feeling so pleasant. Okay, start there. But you want to waste time printing pictures of an AUTOPEN and then take a panning video of them and like stand in front of it smiling. I'm sure he went down there and like laughed himself to sleep last night.
You're a little worried
But
that
come on
Biden
now.
was not aware of any of the decisions.
No, I'm
he
not
was
concerned at
making
all.
this time of
I'm
year?
worried that we
You
are
don't have
9
any
months into
curiosity about
I'm
that?
9 months into a presidency
You
and
don't have
realizing
any
that nothing
concern?
really changed, and I'm more concerned that he's still focused on Biden as opposed to policy.
All right, call me crazy and obsessed with relitigating the past and just totally backward looking, but I personally would still like to know if the president was aware of the decisions he was
Okay,
making
well, let's
in
let
this
that
time
man
of year.
recover.
Crazy?
Let's let him recover from cancer, and then we can relitigate it.
Okay,
Otherwise,
we
let's
gotta
move
wait
on.
until he gets through his medical issue, and then I'll be allowed to.
Do you
ask
want him to do an
questions
interview? What do you
about
want him
whether
to do
the
right now?
president was actually? I would just like to continue to have it looked into by our current administration, and maybe the media could show more than a passing interest in this subject.
Okay,
I don't
let's
know.
make a deal. Let's go look into Epstein and release all these Treasury documents, and then let's also look into everything else that you want to look into.
All right, that does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way today, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so you never miss any content. We will see you later. We appreciate you. We love you. Goodbye.